Hi, this video provides an overview of the process for creating paychecks from time records in OnTarget. Creating paychecks from time records is useful if timesheets are not implemented, but you'd still like to benefit from the automatic reconciliation of billing to payroll. This requires that time records are created, either by notes, schedules, or through manual entry. Time records go on to create billing and then payroll in this case, which is where the automatic reconciliation of billing to payroll comes into play. To ensure that your paychecks are going to be created from time records, first confirm that the system is configured that way. Go to Configure, List Configuration, Payroll, and Rules. The Import from Timesheets checkbox should not be checked if paychecks will be created from time records instead of approved timesheets. Again, when this box is deselected, the import source of the paycheck is time records rather than timesheets. That is a one-time setup. It should not be changed unless you implement timesheets and move towards creating paychecks from approved timesheets, which is recommended. From that point on, the first step is going to time records. First, you will set your calculation options. This is establishing the check date and the pay period. A list of all of the deductions will be displayed here. Any deduction that is checked will be withheld from the employee's paychecks, as long as the employee record has a deduction set up to be withheld. These deductions can be unchecked in the event that a paycheck should be created, but deductions should not be withheld for the particular payroll run. An example of this scenario is for a correction check where an employee's health insurance has already been withheld for the pay period. For that correction check, the health insurance deduction should not be withheld again. So this would be an easy way of creating the check without taking the deduction. Keep in mind that if a deduction needs to be discontinued altogether for an employee, then it should be inactivated at the employee record. Click Save once completing this form. Next, go to Employee Timesheet. This is a report that will help you understand the hours that will be imported into payroll and therefore creating the paycheck. To run the report, at the minimum, a pay period must be entered. In this case, the pay period is populated because I've already set the calculation options. It is important to note that this date can be changed if you know you need to review unpaid time from a prior pay period. For example, if someone turned in late documentation and needs to be paid for that older time, those dates would need to be included in this time frame. This will then pull those unpaid hours to give you an accurate total for the employee for hours to be paid in this payroll run. We will look at that further in just a minute. This report can be run for a single cost center or a single employee, or for all cost centers and all employees by leaving that blank. In the standard version of the report, the total hours per pay type display for the specified pay period. An important feature of this report is that it will display an error for any hours that will not transfer to a paycheck due to missing pay types. The system will force that a pay type is set up to support each service and cost center the employee worked. This is of great benefit as it ensures that the revenue for cost center and service matches to the payroll wages. Any errors listed will be on the very bottom of the report. In this case, Sally Caregiver provided the SEG service in the Asheville Cost Center, and therefore a pay type needs to be set up in her employee record. Now that the pay type is set up to support Asheville and the SEG service, rerunning the report will eliminate that error message. Let's check that out just to be sure. You will now see 72 hours of the SEG service in the Asheville Cost Center for Sally Caregiver. That should have cleaned up the error message, which it did. The only remaining error message is for Clara Barton, and in this case, she has overlapping time on 7/13 from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. This error message is making certain that individuals are not being overpaid, especially in the event of keying errors that have caused overlap. This same report can be run in the unformatted version if the data needs to be dumped to Excel for filtering of the data. The report can also be run in a daily summary format and an unformatted daily summary format in order to get a breakdown of the hours per day. The unformatted version, again, is just a data dump for easy export to Excel and filtering. Once the errors have been cleared up and the hours reviewed, the next step is to create paychecks. To create paychecks from time records, set the necessary filters. First, be sure to set the import date range. This will either be the pay period or it could be a date range other than the pay period if you have to go back to prior pay periods to grab unpaid time and import that into payroll. The other important filters are imported to pay transactions, not imported, and paid, not paid. This will present only records that do not have an associated check. Click Search to review. In this case, we have 47 total records that have never been imported to payroll and are not paid. If I were to back my date up to the prior pay period, the beginning of the prior pay period, I have a few more records here. This tells me that there is some time that did not get paid from the prior pay period. This would also be a way to help me understand the date range to use when entering the pay period for the employee timesheet report. Backing up that pay period start date is what will give me the total hours for the report for unpaid time. With your filters set, it is now time to create the paychecks. Choosing from all will import all time listed here in the grid. To import maybe just one caregiver if needed, select all of the caregiver's time records, maybe doing so by first sorting the caregiver field, and then creating the paychecks accordingly. I'm going to choose from all. Any errors in creating paychecks will be presented. This report can be exported for further review. Most of the errors rely on components of the employee record to be addressed. In this case, there's overlapping time, which we've already seen on the employee timesheet report. It is just notifying us one more time, and we can choose to override that if we determine that is legitimate overlap. Overriding it will still bring the time into payroll. In this case, Daniel Lewis does not have a pay type set up for providing the service in-home skill building in the Asheville Cost Center. We'd have to go to the employee record and set the pay type up just as we did for Sally Caregiver. In the case of Ryan Miller, there are one or more zero rates, telling us that a paycheck cannot be created until all pay rates against pay types that have hours have rates against them. Running the employee timesheet report again would help us understand the pay type that doesn't have a rate. Once you have determined anything that should be overridden, you would be sure to check the box and override to create the paychecks. Do not override means that the hours for these folks against these pay types would not come into payroll. Once all of the errors have been fixed, simply click the Create Paychecks button again. This will only create checks for any employee whose check has not yet already been created. There is no need to select the individual's name, as the system will not duplicate a check if one has already been created. Or hitting your search again would return just the individuals whose time has not yet imported. This matches up to the employees we saw on the error report. Be aware that the filters for cost center, client cost center, or employee cost center, and for caregiver name can be used to toggle how the deductions are to be withheld when creating the paychecks. This allows for flexibility in handling any exceptions for how deductions should be applied on an individual basis if necessary. Once all of the paychecks have been created and the errors cleaned up, then it is time to review the paychecks. To do so, go to Paychecks. Search for the paychecks using any combination of the filter options. To review all paychecks created for the check date, enter in check date or use the pay period filter. To review the details of the check, open up the check. Pay transaction details for each pay type are displayed, as well as the pay stub to be able to review gross earnings and net earnings. If there are additional ways to pay the employee, the units can be directly keyed in against the corresponding pay types. Simply enter in the unit value and then hit Save and Calculate. A new stub will appear with the new pay transaction details and a new gross and net amount. Continue editing any paycheck as need be. An important function to know about is the reduce salary function. This function allows payroll to correctly allocate the billable hours a salaried employee worked per service and cost center and to still only pay them their salaried rate. Another way this is helpful is to track paid time off for salaried employees, since the system will maintain balances and display the balance on their pay stub. To perform this function, click the Reduce Salary checkbox for each pay type that should be included in the salary rate. When the box is checked, a Reduce Salary button will appear. Click this button to reduce the salary amount. The combination of all of these will pay the employee their salary rate. Click Save and Calculate to verify. The salary and hourly pay types combined will equal to the flat salaried rate. After all edits are made to the paychecks, you can collectively review them by going to the check review. From All will display all checks in the search grid. This is a nice review before printing the checks. Once they're printed, any editing can no longer be done without voiding. You'll have a nice summary page that will give you the total dollar amount for each pay type, the deduction totals, and the disbursement amounts. The check review summary is just the one-page review with the grand totals. And the check review unformatted is a breakdown of the number of regular units and any overtime units against each pay type, and also broken out by cost center. This is a good analysis in the breakdown of hours paid. You can select any one of these checks and review each one of those 3 reports for just those selected checks by choosing from Selected. When you're ready to print checks, go to the Print Checks option. If you have a combination of both Paychecks, physical checks, and direct deposit files, you may want to first use your disbursement filter to distinguish between the two. This just saves paper, since any direct deposit files don't necessarily need to be printed out. There is nothing to cache. The direct deposit pay stub will get sent to the employee either via email, or it will hit their dashboard in the Paychecks dashlet. Once choosing check and printing your checks, you could then flip this filter to direct deposit and create your direct deposit file at one time. Again, that's just a good way to save paper. This completes the payroll process. For more information, please see related payroll articles. Should you have any questions about this, please contact support by going to Options, Support, and Contact Support.